Okay, so this is chapter 2, Family Tree. My dad ran off when I was in kindergarten, and mom went after him. My grandmother raised me until this past summer. That's when my mom finally stopped trying to get my dad turned around and remembered about me. One morning, she rang the doorbell. Stop, jot, enroll. We just found out so much new information in this first chapter. The beginning of the chapter 2, Family Tree, has told us about his what? If you did your text preview and realized that Family Tree might connect to the deeper meaning of what's going on in chapter 2, absolutely mark yourself 5 additions for considering your engagement and mark yourself 5 more for your academic impact. We know that his dad ran off when he was in what grade? Kindergarten. So his mom went after him and then he was left to be raised by who? His grandmother, absolutely. So by being raised by his grandmother and without having his mother and dad, do you think that this could have played a role in his behavior? In how he talks to adults? Maybe even his relationship with his grandmother. Let's see what chapter 2 has in store so we can figure it out, okay? Who's there? I yelled, and when Grandma and I yanked open the door, a stranger was standing on the porch mat. Like one of those church ladies dressed in shiny shoes and a Sunday hat. I'm sorry for being gone so long, she said. I'm sorry you're back, Grandma snapped. And shoved me out of the way with her elbow, which nearly jammed my Tootsie Pop down my throat. I just want to smooth things out, said the lady, who was my mom. I've heard this all before, Grandma shouted, and shoved me back again because I kept sticking my head around her hips so I could see what's going on. You know how you do that when you're standing behind your parents or you're just trying to... I really wasn't sure what either of them was talking about because I didn't recognize the lady. Then she pushed the door open and took one big giant step right into the living room before anyone told her she could. Hi, Joey, she said. I'm your mom. Stop. How do you think Joey feels right now? What's the tone? Hold on a second. What we say about how we feel. What we say about how we feel. What's the tone? What type of tone is it setting? Continue to think about that. We're going to keep reading. First word on 3. 1, 2, 3. When. When she reached out and tried to touch my head, I ducked away and said, I wasn't sure she was my mom because I didn't even remember what she looked like. She got an awful pain across her face, and I figured she must be my mom because no stranger would have been so hurt by what I said. But she didn't crumble. Instead, she started walking all through the rooms, just shaking her head at the way Grandma and I kept things. Now that I'm back, she said, things are going to change around here. No more living in a pig pen. Then, right away, she started making up new rules and trying to take control of me and Grandma, the house. And I didn't like her at all. And during those first weeks she was back, we all fought pretty good. Stop. Is this a problem? Are we being introduced to a problem? So, let's evaluate our characters. We have Joey, we have his grandmother, we have Mrs. Maxey, and then we also have now, his mother. So when his mother comes into the picture, who wasn't in the picture, and we're not quite sure why other than the fact that she went to go search for his father. Since his mother wasn't in the picture and is now coming back, and now we see conflict. She's trying to take control. She's trying to tell them what to do. She's trying to make them know what the new way in the new system is going to be when she hasn't even been there. Is that fair? Is that fair? Let's keep reading. First word on 3. 1, 2, 3. I was a wired up mess by the time Mom came back to live with me and Grandma. By then, Everyone thought my grandma was the nutty old lady responsible for my bad behavior. But I am how I am because my grandma was born wired. And my dad, Carter Pigza, was born wired. And I followed right behind him. It's as if our family tree looks like a set of high voltage wires strung across a field from one steel tower to the next. Grandma all the time said I was just like my dad, bouncing off the walls 24 hours a day. But he hasn't yet bounced in our direction. So I guess he is still bouncing around somewhere else. Grandma said he bounced over to Pittsburgh, but someday he might spring back and just bounce right through our front door. I wish he would because I only just hear about him now. And I'd like to see for myself what he is like. I have one of those wind-up cars with twisty wheels that when it bumps into things, it can change direction and bump into something else over and over. When I play with it, I always think my dad is steering. Eyes spinning in his head and his foot all the way down on the gas. My toy car gets trained and stops, but I'm guessing that he never winds down? He just keeps on smashing into buildings and signs and parked cars. I figure we got a lot in common because once, when Grandma was in a sudden good mood, she said to me as a helpful warning, "Joey, I want you to pull your act together. You don't want to turn out like your father, do you?" "Can I get back to you on that?" I yelled as I tried to run off. "Listen to me," she said, grabbing me as I ran by. "Your dad's such a nervous wreck. He couldn't stand still long enough to line up for free medicine down at the clinic. Then Grandma held me by my ears and I lifted my feet off the floor until I wiggled like a snake and screamed and she let go." Pause. Let's go ahead and use this new information to connect us back to what we just said about the mother. We said that his mother left, okay, to go find the father, right? So when his mother went to go find his father, we didn't really know why. But now it's telling us that he was in Pittsburgh. It's telling us that he's bouncing around. Between the grandmother and Joey, we can infer, which means predict or guess by using the text, that Joey's father and mother were going through a pretty hectic relationship. And now that the mother is back, but the father is still not back, we have to figure out why did his mom come back, okay? First word on three. 1, 2, 3. People who blame Grandma for my behavior are unfair to think that she was really the crazy one and I was innocent. It was more that we were whacked out partners. We zipped around the house and slapped at each other like one of those world wrestling tag teams. I'd be the Hulk and she'd be the Doctor Doom. And when the phone rang, we'd run at it, screaming and yelling and slam into each other. And by the time one of us got the upper hand, the person on the other end had freaked out and hung up. And nothing in the house was ever finished or cleaned up right. A jigsaw puzzle of ancient Egypt outlined the dining room table with the extra pieces piled up like pyramids spilling over onto the floor. I had stacks of homework I had forgotten and drawings of my grandmother's face on big locust bug bodies, all taped to the floor as if she'd been squashed by a truck. I stuck wet leaves over the windows, glued my stuffed animals to the chairs, hid all over the oven knobs in the dead plant pots, and made huge string spider webs between the doorknobs and ceiling lights and floor vents. Every now and again, I'd catch Grandma in a web, and she'd get tangled up. "Help me! Help me!" she'd squeak like the fly with the human face in that crazy bug movie. Sometimes she could be funny, but not often. Most times she'd just get mad and keep after me nonstop and complain about everything I did. "Don't touch. Don't wiggle. Don't run. Don't yell, she'd bark out. No matter what I touched or said or did, I felt like I was in a cartoon, standing on hot coals with little red devils poking me in the bottom with pitchforks as I jumped from one fiery place to another. Even the words I spoke scalded my tongue. And if, by accident, I'd sit still for a minute and just vibrate, she'd complain anyway. She could yell at me and knit at the same time. She could get those needles going as if she were fighting off the Three Musketeers all at once. And before long, she'd have a strip of wool that could reach around our block of row houses and be tied in a bow. But it never amounted to anything. Everything started because nothing finished. And all her projects and my homework and hobbies just end up in piles collecting dust. Even now, my bedroom still has the walls painted in placid pink. She had got going on the bottom, but didn't finish at the top. Someone told her the color pink would calm me down, but it didn't work. Until mom returned, my bed was pushed over in the corner, along with the chair and splintered dresser, drawers with the peeled off fake wood. Old newspapers were spread over the sheets to keep off paint, but I'd been using them as a blanket. Sometimes I think of Grandma had finished the painting. That pink on everything, I might have calmed down. I used to sit in my closet and pry open the paint can and stare into the shiny pink circle and was mesmerized for hours. Or maybe just minutes. I could never tell. But if you believe a color gave off a feeling, then I think it is true. That pink gives off lots of calm. Maybe that pink just wasn't pink enough because before long I turned into my weird self again. After mom came back this past summer and started to organize things, Grandma got worse. She got meaner, and I think it was because she didn't like the rules either. I had to stay with her when mom was at work, and she began to scare me. About a month before school started, she was mean all morning and as usual. And in the afternoon, instead of settling down to knit, she kept getting meaner and meaner. Finally, she got so mad at me for bouncing around, she threw everything out of the refrigerator and yanked out the shelves and flung them across the floor. Now get inside and stay inside, she said, with the ketchup bottle spinning around her feet like a bowling pin. That slowed me down. I looked at her, and her dentures were pulled over to one side and snapping like she couldn't control them. Like she could climb up the side of her face. Like they could climb up the side of her face and bite her own ear off. "In," she shouted. "Get in before I blow a fuse." A hot, steamy sound came out with each word. "Don't make me," I said. Hopping from foot to foot, "Don't." "In," she said, and her body snapped like a whip. I said, "Get in or I'll tell your mom you won't listen to my rules." But I wouldn't get in. I knew there were good rules and bad rules, and having a time outside or having a time out inside a refrigerator was a bad rule. "Lousy, no good kid," she said, slamming the door. "I need a break." She turned and marched outside to smoke a cigarette while sitting in the porch rocker. In a minute, I heard her get after someone about throwing trash in our yard, and then she stomped off. When my mom came home that night from work, I was alone and scared. She saw the kitchen and all the mess, and I told her what had happened. No wonder you're a nervous wreck, Mom said. And she was angry. She went looking for Grandma and found one scuffed up shoe down by the corner sewer. And that was all. After Mom thought about it, she said Grandma was probably so wired she slipped right down into the sewer and was washed away for good. We never did call the police. And after a couple of days, I kept bending down over the iron gate, cupping my hands, shouting into the dark hole, Grandma! Grandma! I forgive you! Come back! She never answered. And I was sorry because I was the same as her at times when I lost it. Grandma, isn't it exactly like you? Mom said to me. After I told her I was sad, the difference is she's more active in the mouth and you are more active in the feet. Grandma was always saying the wrong hurtful things for half of the day. Then she spent the other half of the day apologizing. She has a hyperactive mouth. My mom said, you know how sometimes you can't stop moving your feet or swinging on the doors or jumping on the bed? Yes, I said, hanging my head and scratching at the dry patch on my scalp that I had already rubbed bald and a little bloody. Can you tell Dad to be quiet, please, when he comes in? Mom pulled my hand away and held it between hers. Well, your grandmother can't help but say things like, you don't know what you're doing. You're ruining everything. You never listened to me. I always said you were as dumb as dirt. Mom was right. Pause. I know it's been a long reading for the chapter 2, but we have to stop here and think about how this relationship has affected Joey. What do you think that this would do to you? How do you think that this would make you feel or interact? How would this confuse you? Because it seems as though Joey doesn't really have a great understanding of everything that's going on, as he's not really sure where his grandmother is. He's not really sure why she's acting this way, other than the fact that she's wired and she's been wired. But now that what we know is new is that she's wired where? And he's wired where? Let's see how this connects as we continue to read the end of Family Tree. Chapter 2 is called Family Tree, and we're learning more about his mother, his father, and his grandmother. Where are those people at? In his family tree. And this chapter is called... Let's keep reading. First word on 3. 1, 2, 3. Grandma. Grandma would just get so excited about being mean that one thing would lead to another and another. And before long, she didn't know what she was saying, but her lips were flapping a mile a minute. Then, when she finally settled down, she would feel bad. I'm so sorry, she'd begin. I never knew anything I said upset anyone. You all shouldn't listen to me. You know I'm just a nasty trash talking old fool. She'd say the same thing over and over again. She should have been on meds too. Big time. Grandma-sized meds. But because she was a grandma, people didn't think she was sick. They just called her a batty old bird. But she was sick, like me. Only old, so her sickness was different. Now, all that's changed since Mom came back, and I couldn't live without her because she's really the one who understands how I am when I get worked up in a wild spell. Like yesterday, before school, when I was playing stuntman in the early morning, I was diving from the top of the stepladder Mom had left up to change the burned out ceiling lights. I belly flopped onto the couch, then bounced onto the floor. She woke up and in seconds pinned me down and pressed her face to mine and said, "So what's up, Doc? You gonna be even or odd today?" Can I get back to you on that? I said, trying to squirm away. Then, suddenly, she held out both fists in front of me. Pick one, she said. And I did. And my pill was in her hand. It is always in her hand. Like she is some kind of magic Pez Meds dispenser. See, she said calmly and stroked my head. You know how to choose what's good for you. So are you going to put the ladder away? Yeah, I said, laughing, and got to my feet. I swallowed my pill without water and could feel it roll, then stumble, then roll a little more, then stumble all the way down my throat and vanish into my belly. Then I picked the ladder up and darted across the room, but my aim was off, and I slammed into the door jamb. That jarred me. Then I tried it again and again until I nearly had all the paint chipped off around the dented woodwork. And she just let me keep on trying until finally I got the ladder and the opening lined up just right and stumbled through and plowed into the kitchen table and knocked the plastic rooster salt and pepper shakers to the floor. Even when you're a baby, you had a hard time getting a square peg into a square hole, she called. She called out behind me. Remember, rule number 1, slow down and think about what you're doing. Mom is big on rules for me. All right, so that is chapter 2, Family Tree. We know that not only have we learned about his family tree, but we learned about how his family tree affects Joey, right? We understand that his grandmother has similar issues that he does, only she's not on medication for it. He is. And his father has similar issues as well, but the way that he's more similar to his father is that his issues are where? In his feet, absolutely. So because his issues are in his feet and his grandmother's issues are in her mouth, she tends to do what? Say a lot more disrespectful or hurtful things, and he tends to do more things that are hurtful or irritating or bothersome, okay? So, as we continue reading Joey Pigza, let's continue to learn about how these characters are reacting but also responding. We know that he didn't really respond to his mother very well when she first arrived, but now that his grandmother's gone and his mother's kind of assuming the role of a mother again, their relationship is changing. So I want you all to continue to take notes on how this relationship is changing and how the problem is going to be solved. All right? See you in chapter 3.